Good morning, everyone. This is Stephanie Kitchens at Hightower Stitching, bringing you a video today with a beautiful quilt that really makes you think of spring. The quilt, what we're going to do today is we're going to look at the materials you need for making two blocks. We're going to sew block 1, and block 2 will be on the second video for today. And as we're sewing them, I want to give you some ideas that'll help make your flying geese and your blocks come out to be the right size. They are 12.5-inch blocks. This quilt is from the American Patchwork and Quilting magazine, June 2020, page 42. There are two different blocks that make this quilt. Each block is 12.5 inches. One difference with this quilt is when you look at it this way, you can't see, but when I turn over to this page, you'll notice that the blocks are set on the diagonal. And that's one of the things that I thought about when I just got so excited making all the blocks. I've got to be honest and tell you, I didn't really look and see how much material made the backing. That would have told me a little bit about the size of the quilt. But also that the blocks would be on the diagonal. And you can see that it alternates on each row, two different blocks. So let's get started. Here is a sample of one of the first blocks that I made. So you can tell where we're going to go. And then if you decide to use the way they do their quilt, then you're going to be turning your block on point because you're going to make them in diagonal rows. Now, here's what I was going to tell you about what I should have really looked at a little closer. There is a lot of the background fabric. And so to start, there's 2.5 yards of cream. They also used another little fabric that had little dots in it for part of it. And that was another 3 7/8 yard that made up that backing. So you might want to start small and see where you go. But the thing for me was it takes 7 1/8 yards of backing. So like looking at that bed, you could tell it was larger, but once you know it's over 7 yards of backing, it's a really good size. And the batting is 85 by 102 inches. And that will make 20 block 1s, which is the one that I just showed you, and then also 12 block 2s that go in between. And the way this quilt worked, the easiest to explain the blocks was to actually tell you what we're going to do and then to show you on the machine real quickly. And one other thing I was going to tell you is that when I took these blocks with me, I didn't have my sewing machine. And if you've never hand quilted, or if you like to hand quilt every once in a while, this is a great block. The first block is big. You have nice long runs, and it's great practice. When you get to the second block, the pieces are smaller, and that's where it comes in that you're being able to handle that needle and make those neat little stitches. And every one of mine that flying geese that I did with the hand stitch turned out really nice, and you'll see that as we go. So let's get started. Here's block 1. Block 1's center block is just a 4.5-inch square. That's it. That's where you're going to start. After that, you're going to have 4 triangles, and these came from 2 5.5-inch squares, and you're going to cut the square 2 times diagonally. So that'll give you 4 pieces. So you'll have 8 pieces for that. And so I've got those laid there. What you're going to do is you're going to sew 1 to each side, and then you're going to turn it, and you're going to sew 1 on each side that way. And I'll show you how I got them, that I didn't have any wonky blocks when I got done. And then when you get that square, which is right here in the center, done, you need to lay your ruler on there and make sure your squares, or your grid, and make sure that your square is 6 1/4 inch. And I'll show you why that's important. You sort of have an idea, but it really can affect how your final spots look when you do add the last parts. That was the next section is to the second color that you want to use for your outside. So you've got your center, and then you've got almost like your petals around the outside. And what you want to do is cut 4 3 1/4 by 6 1/4 inch rectangles. And you're going to take 2 of the rectangles and not do anything to them, but sew those to opposite sides. And so I just let mine sit there, and sometimes I'll tell you east and west, whatever. But you're going to sew 2 of those plain ones onto each side of that box you just made. And if you remember, you had some more triangles left from the beginning when you cut. And you're going to take those, and you're going to sew the triangles onto the other 2 blocks that you have left and open it up. And it'll go and it'll make the other side right here. You can see here's a triangle, here's your block, and here's a triangle. And that's going to really be a nice block. And then that's 1, 2, 3. Here's number 4, the last thing. All right, the last part that you'll need to cut is 2 6-inch squares. And cut it diagonally once. So then you'll have 4 pieces. And these are going to make your setting corners. And this is really nice. And this is a good lesson in finishing corners and setting pieces, because this says 6-inch is very generous. It says 6-inch square, the triangle, the square that's cut. And you'll see that when we sew it on, there's going to be a lot of material around there. That's because you want to have enough so that you can have a 1/4 inch on this side, and this side you've got plenty of material to fill out that corner. And that's a neat thing about this, because once you get those 4 corners put on the end, then you're going to take and use your if you have an omni grid or any kind of a grid, that plastic grid you can lay on, but 12.5 inch will make your life really easy. So if you have a 12.5 inch plastic square ruler, that would be nice. And with that said, I'm going to take you and show you some examples of ones that I've done, and then I'm going to take you to the sewing machine. And we moved into my room where I've got the colors laid out for you to see. And you can see I have quite a combination. Sometimes the dark's in the middle, sometimes the dark's on the outside edge. I don't know how this is going to turn out. I just used colors that I liked and sewed those. Okay, to get started, you need that 4.5 inch square, and you need 4 of the triangles that you cut from the squares. And what really worked well was I took each one of 4 of them, and I just put a little crease. I didn't iron it. I just put a little crease right there. And then I took my 4-inch square, and I did the same thing. Every side had pressed so that you knew where the center was. Then I took the triangle, and I lined up my two parts right there. And to keep them in place, and to make it easier to start, I actually cut that little tab off the end. I've got my little tag of fabric to catch the first stitches so that I can go right into this part. So I'm going to line it up with my 1/4 inch. And that's really good if you have some way that you can make sure that you line it up at 1/4 inch. If you're hand sewing it, it'd be easy with just a ruler or something. If you're going to do some chain stitching, then you could, of your blocks, then you could just add it on there. So what I tend to do is to do the opposite side. Do the same thing. I've already got it folded. This one's not folded. And this way you got a pretty good chance of things being in the right spot. And then I'm going to start again. 1/4 inch. And so now you've got 2 sides done. You can press those towards the center. I found out that I could press them open with an iron because I'm just like that. I like them lying flat, and it won't matter on this part. Then you'll do the other 2 parts. So don't get nervous. I'm shifting colors to one that's finished. Okay, here's the one that I've gotten finished. And you can see I've got plenty of room around the outside edges. And it says to measure that you've got 6 1/4 inch square. So you can trim it down. And that's one of those we were talking about, making sure you had plenty of material. So I've already got this down to 6 1/4. And I can see I've got plenty of material on each edge to make my flying geese. Now we had the 2 rectangular pieces that we want to add. And this time, you can do it again and fold it in half. But what you want to do is lay it as close to that little part where you have right here. And we're going to look at that in just a minute to get this just right. But I'm going to pin this. I'm going to pin it away from the sewing machine part where I'm going to sew, because I'm going to actually turn it over. And this is great. When I turn it over, this is one way you can do it. You can see exactly right here where you want to hit when you get ready to sew. So let's see if we can hit it this time. I'm going to take and start. I'm going to do 1/4. And as I get closer, look, I'm right on it, and then I go on by. I'm going to stop, and we'll see if we've got that going right. This is always the fun part. And I open it up, and I want you to look at that. This is not your flying geese, but this is going to help you when you get ready. And then you're going to take, and you're going to do the other one. And to get us where we want to go, I want to do this one. I'm going to lay it on there. I'm going to pin it so it won't move. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to spot where I want to go, right there. And see, this is so neat if you're hand stitching, because it works the same way. I'm going to go again. Here we go. As I get closer, I'm making sure that I'm going to hit right. I want to hit right in there, right where the white and the color parts sort of all come together and go across. Then I'd like to press it. Oh, look. How about that? 2 for 2. 2 for 2. That's an odd color combination, isn't it? But this is really working well, and I can just hand press that. I'll hand press this because I want to look at. See how neat this is? We're down to number 4, to the last piece. And it's so nice and big. When you get ready to quilt, it's going to be a challenge, but it's going to be fun. Okay, I've got my other long piece, and I've added my triangles to it, and I've pressed them open, so I won't have a lot of bulk. You might like to fold yours to one direction or the other. And the first thing I did on this is I matched up my seam, where my seams come together. Because if you've got some give, then that'll go in between, and you'll know you're going to be right on the money with this. And if you've made your seams too big, you can go back and let one side out and then come back and lay them down. But this is fitting pretty good. But you can see how funny that is. Well, what I want to see is where my 4th inch is going to be, and I can't tell it this way. So I'm going to flip it over. And I can see by looking at this that where I want to sew is right there. And let's see. If I turn it, you can see I'm going to catch the material. And you have a little option if you want to, without pulling it up too much. If you want it to come up just a little bit, you can do that. but we've got it where it's going to catch. So I'm going to pin that in place so it'll stay. And then I'm ready to start again. And you can cut that little tag off if you want to. You don't have to. Let's see what happens. Okay, 1/4 inch. As I get closer to that, I have to remember that I did have a pin under there. And I'm gonna pull it out. Hold it so it stays. Okay, now watch where I'm aiming for. There it is. We know we were very close. Keep going. I'm coming to another pin, but it was on the other side. I'm going to pull it out. And if you're not sure your material will stay where you want it, then you could always come and have repinned it on that side once you figured it out, you had enough material. I appreciate your patience, but we can't get to anything without doing something else. So now I would take and press this top part. Now I'm going to do that real quick. All right. Now let's see how we did. I can actually turn it over and look without ironing it yet. And look. So now we're 3 for 3. And then you're going to take and you're going to add the last one on. You know exactly how to do it now. Just do a little fold and mark it, set it with that, and then go. And what's going to happen is and now we've got that part finished. Well, now that's really the last part. I guess I got so excited about where we were that I miscounted. But I'm down to the last big pieces, which were cut from the 6 inch, I believe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a press in the middle. And then I'm going to make you can trim those little ears off if you want to, or you can just fold it. It's not going to matter. And make a press mark there. Now this is one of those neat things because this is a nice big triangle. And this is what I was telling you about. This is going to make sure that you've got plenty of material to make your corner. And you find this on quilts that you're going to set the corners and you have a bigger, and you say, gosh, that's really big. Well, it's really wonderful. And once you get it laid on there and pinned, then just come over to the end. And this time we don't have to watch anything except making it 1/4 of an inch. It's all the way across. And there, you don't get any big surprises or anything. And you just take and open it up. And see how nice that is? You've got plenty of room. I'm going to do a quick press. Because I want you to see this corner now, this very corner right here, where this comes together, this is going to be your edge. And the trick was to have a nice 1/4 inch space right in there. I hope you can see that. Then when I look at the next corner of the block, look at this. I have plenty of material. So when I get all 4 of them on there, I'm going to lay that 12.5 inch grid on. I'm going to make sure I've got 1/4 of an inch on this side and 1/4 on that side, and each side before I trim it off. So let's lay this, and you can already visually see that you're going to have plenty to do that. Now I've got all 4 of the corners sewn on, and you can see what I was talking about. You've got plenty of material out there to cover that. So I pressed it. And I just happened to press those out because it was close. But I can look and see that I have on each one of those corners at least 1/4 of an inch, if not more. Here's the 12.5 inch grid. And I'm going to lay it on there. And I'm not going to cut one side real quick. I am going to look at all of them, these corners, and I'm going to make sure that I'm showing that I'm sitting on 1/4 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. This one's not. Now it is. I've got it tilted right. And go back and look at that other one. And you keep working with it till you get it where you've got 1/4 of an inch. And this time I seem to have a little bit of extra down at the bottom So I am probably going to come and trim that separately in a minute, but I'm going to make sure I hold this real carefully, and I know that I've got that these 3 sides are good to be 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to take my cutter and I'm going to carefully make sure you hold your grid really good, and then go ahead and do your cuts. And I told you I knew that I had 3 that were really good, and this is the other one. I think it's pretty good because it's on 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to take and do that. Now I had too much material on the bottom one this time for some reason. So I'm going to slide my grid up. And that's going to make it, it's going to give me 1/4 of an inch where I'll hit. And for now, you would just take and cut this so it stays 12.5 inches, because you might be able to put that at the end. And then I just cut that off. And you've got a really nice square. So now I've got another one of my squares done for the 20 blocks that I had to do. And one thing I want to tell you before I stop real quick, this is the second block, and it's a 12.5 inch block. But the way she did it is that these are going to have 4 different colors. And we're going to sew those on the pieces. But this same block is repeated over and over and over to bring the quilt together. So that may, once you pick those 4 colors that you want in there, that might lead you to some of the colors that you want to put on the other 20 blocks. So don't forget about that, and think about that. And in the next one that I'm going to do, it's the one that I did some hand stitching, but he also does really well on the sewing machine also. This is Stephanie at High Terra Stitching. If you enjoyed this, please hit subscribe and like. If I've forgotten anything, or I'm going to add some information to the description, thank you for watching.